My husband demanded to go through my phone, then vanished forever after reading my convo with my ex. My life has been a roller coaster ever since I came to this world. I would have some good years and bad years. I met someone and that person turned out to be my husband after years of dating. He was a very dominant boss, that is what I loved about him. He was very superior and made me submit to every decision he made. He was a real man. Every woman in our neighborhood wished their husband was like mine. He was a role model to some men. Everything was perfect until he started paying more attention to his work, and I started feeling like I wasn't enough, and also I was getting bored. I missed his compliments and the way he looked at me and touched me. Sometimes I'd be left alone in his huge house and he'd be gone for a week on a business trip. I even thought maybe he was cheating on me. I was needy, but you can't blame me. He made me like this with all the love he gave me and how he treated me, and all of a sudden he just got busy and paid little attention to me. I'm sure someone can relate to what I'm talking about. So let me tell you what exactly happened before my life made a very huge turn during a happy moment. I, female 29, met Matt Harrison, male 34, my husband, in a bookshop where I was previously working before I became a fashion designer. He was there to sign autographs for his book, which was the bestseller at the time. I was shocked when he approached me because I didn't think a man of his standard would want to be with someone like me. A few weeks later, well after he had approached and we exchanged numbers, he came and picked me up after work for a little date just to get to know each other, you know. And I found him very interesting and funny. He was born and raised in Texas. One thing I knew and had noticed about my husband since we had known each other was that he really loved his father, and he was his inspiration. Because he once told me that his father owned a junkyard and taught him how to be a responsible man. What inspired him the most about his dad was that he gave him everything he wanted, and also his junkyard was very profitable. The book he wrote was about his father and how he motivated him to be the man he is today. He was more than just a man. He is very successful, but he doesn't show unless you know a lot about him. I love the fact that he was not arrogant because of his riches. He was just a low-key successful person. He moved his family to Los Angeles. His father wanted to move in an area with an ocean view. Imagine the privilege. We shared a lot about ourselves and our goals. I considered him my best friend because he was a good listener, you know. He knew how to make time for me, well, until he didn't. We shared a lot in common. He was very business-minded and enthusiastic about what he does. He became my pillar. He would even take me to different places that I didn't even know of, introducing me to different people who were fashion designers. As much as I had the love of becoming a fashion designer one day, I had the skill and talent in designing clothes and bags, but my wish was to first go to fashion designer school, so I would get more knowledge about it and a qualification. The more we spent time together, the more I fell for him. Was I rushing things? But you can never say no to what the heart wants and needs right. One thing about me was that I couldn't confess my feelings, and I was not about to embarrass myself like that to a man like him. Not knowing that the feeling was mutual, actually, can you imagine that? There was this day where he took me to this very classy and nice restaurant. We were actually going for our first actual date, and it was epic. And crazy enough, it was also my birthday. Yes, I had told him when my birthday was because he had asked me, but I never thought he would actually do something so good for me. A lot of people usually forgot my birthday except for my mother, of course, but no one had ever done anything for me or even bought me a gift. I fell in love with him each second we would spend with each other. I've already mentioned that he knew about my dreams of becoming a fashion designer, so he advised me to quit my job and start following my dream, and he was going to pay for my college fees. I didn't want that because I wanted to pay my own fees, but he insisted. I was a bit skeptical at first, but eventually agreed to his offer. I had nothing to lose, right? Months later, our friendship elevated to being girlfriend and boyfriend. I was truly happy. I had the man I fell in love with at the bookstore. He didn't become my friend only, but my pillar and motivator. So what more would I have asked for? After some months of us dating, he asked me to move in with him because the apartment I was staying in was a bit far from him and the college that I was going to attend. I was not sure about his offer. He had done a lot for me already, and I was scared that he would somehow become controlling if I agreed, so I asked for some time to think about it. I was skeptical because I didn't know the outcomes of moving in with him. After 2 full weeks of thinking, I eventually gave in and moved in with him in his apartment. I had nothing to lose, right, and it was for my own good and safety, so it was very thoughtful and sweet of him. Our relationship was a bliss. He wanted nothing about me, and he was somehow insecure, so he made sure to take me to and from college. I really don't know where he got that time, but I appreciated it a lot. I fell much deeper in love with him, you know. A year passed, everything was still a bliss, and we were very inseparable. I passed my first year very well, thanks to my man for being the best. My dream was slowly but surely becoming a reality, and I couldn't be happier. My fashion design career had started booming. My husband had introduced me to some of his associates, and that was a great start for me. His associates then marketed my designs, which gained me a lot of clients, including some celebrities. My husband was the main reason I was that person I was. My fashion was outstanding. I even dressed some celebrities. It was bliss. After 5 years of dating, he finally popped the big question, "Would you marry me?" I was so emotional and couldn't believe that I would be spending my whole life with the man I love. Obviously, I agreed to marry this man. I mean, he was the man of my dreams. I do not regret walking down that aisle. I was the happiest woman at that time. How I wished my mother was still alive so she would see her daughter finally tying the knot with her best friend. A week after our marriage, we moved to an estate in Las Vegas. He once told me that ever since he was a child, he had always wanted to own a casino. So during his book tour, he met someone who owned a casino and was very fascinated by his book. You see the power of making connections, it really helps sometimes. They became friends and he was invited to be a guest in his casino. He ended up telling him about his love of casinos and they made a deal. I sat in a shop in the mall and I hired young designers to work for me. If I wasn't at the shop, I was at home drawing or sleeping. It was sometimes boring because I had no friends. The only friend I had was my husband. That was when everything went in a different direction. He was always busy, since his casino plan became a success. I loved his determination and enthusiasm, but I also needed his time, Well, time passed and he got pretty busy to a point that I would only see him, 2 or 3 times a week, mind you, that it was during winter holidays. He didn't even come back home during the week of Christmas and New Year because it would get pretty hectic. I tried to complain about it because ever since he got the casino deal, he even forgot about my birthday, and it was really unusual and alarming. So when I complained about it, he told me that he was working for our future and our children's future. That was just a lame excuse to justify his absence and behavior. Or was I reading too much on everything? When I saw that my husband was no longer spending a lot of time with me, I started getting bored to the core. I then started going out, going on solo dates or visiting the clubs in Vegas. I was trying to pass time, I couldn't stay cooped up in the house for the longest time because I didn't even know when my husband would have time for me again. I missed him so much, Even our intimate moments were no longer the same. I mean, he would come back home tired, so I would sometimes wear lingerie to spice up things and bring some action spark into our life again. But I would be wasting my time and effort because he would come back very tired and he would just take a bath, eat, and just doze off. What infuriated me the most was when he would just doze off during a serious conversation and always get tired after one round of our intimate moment. It was really a turnoff for me because I wouldn't reach my climax and he would leave me hanging and fall asleep. It was no longer fun in our marriage and I hated that. Time passed. I was starting to enjoy my solo dates, going to check on my work, then visit clubs. It was somehow therapeutic for me and it made me kind of forget about my miserable marriage. I mean, we didn't even have children for Christ's sake, so what my husband was doing made me think that even if we were to have children, that means those children would also suffer to get his attention. I was somehow glad that we didn't have any children or the talk of having any children because they were going to suffer like I was. One day as I was going to my solo dates, I bumped into my ex-boyfriend, Keenan Bryanston, male, 30 years old. Keenan was actually my high school sweetheart. We grew apart when we went for different directions of life. I had actually thought that Keenan was the love of my life, But the distance and life issues grew us apart. When the proverb says, where their water stopped, they will stop again. I lived with that proverb for a long time. I think 4 or 5 years, but he was never coming back up until I eventually allowed myself to move on. I tried having relationships, but they were all not what I had expected and what I had wanted and needed in my life. I mean, 2 of my eyes were emotionally abusive. They would make me feel small and stupid until I decided to call it quits after being patient for a very long time. My mother would tell me that if I didn't get out of those relationships whilst I still can, I would get out of it with a coffin. I ended the last abusive relationship when I was in between life and death. I woke up in a coma that time, and the state I saw my mother in made me realize that being patient again would eventually murder my mother. So I ended everything and even applied for a restraining order against him. Since then, I have only focused on my life and my mother. I was not even thinking about any relationships. I hated the word relationship because it would take me back to those times where I was voiceless and controlled. Another thing, on some of my ex-boyfriends, I would look for Keenan in them. I wanted to forget Keenan using them, and they saw that, then ended the relationship. But Matt came and changed all that. He made me believe in love again, and with my mother's advice, I gave love another chance. I just couldn't believe it when I bumped into Keenan. My heart started pumping abnormally and strangely. My other side was happy that I had bumped into him, while another one was just fuming. I was angry at him for leaving me and never thought of coming back. I even thought about the things that I went through in relationships, looking for him in every man that I was meeting or dating. And right when I was in a better place and able to move on, he decided to just show up in the same restaurant that I was in. My mind was running. I was thinking that maybe he was stalking me or he had been stalking me. Keenan greeted me and asked to speak to me privately. He started telling me how much he had been missing me and all those lies that usually tells to make you feel better. But I was not easily convinced by his lies, so I left him there and went back home. When I got home, I was mixed with emotion. I just didn't know how to contain myself. Matt came back earlier that day and asked why I was crying and looked heartbroken. I lied to him, of course. I told him that my abusive stepdad had come back and I had seen him in one of the grocery stores in town. I knew that what I was saying was utter lies. Yes, I had an abusive stepdad, but he is in prison facing his triple life sentence. 3 weeks later, I received Keenan's friend request on Facebook. I don't know what made me accept it, but I did, and I didn't regret it. I wanted to know where he was and why he never came back for me. I wanted to shout at him and maybe give him a few punches and slaps. In an instant that I had accepted his request, he sent me an inbox text. Obviously, I replied to him because I was yearning to know the reasons why he never came back. My heart still loved him a lot. Yes, I had moved on and even got married to Matt, but Keenan was like a drug that I was addicted to, and no one would know or understand the kind of affection it had on me. Keenan and I started talking and even planned to meet up so that we would iron out our differences and approach the elephant in the room. You know, Keenan's reappearance made me confused because I knew that I loved Matt, and I was married to him, but I loved Keenan also. I mean, Keenan and I didn't really break up, but the distance grew us apart. I was sure that he had moved on also because I noticed a ring on his finger. And to tell the truth, I was hurt a lot. My heart broke at the glance that I made and saw a ring on his finger. A week later, Keenan and I grew closer again. Yes, we were both married and we respected our partners, but you know when two hearts yearn for each other, they always find a way to each other again. Mind you, that time Keenan even had a child with his wife. Oh wait, no correction, he had children, 3 of them, and he loved them so much. I didn't have a problem with his children, you know. They were such angels with sweet little souls. But my problem started when their mother, Keenan's wife, started accusing me of being her husband's mistress. That time I had not gotten back with Keenan. We were just communicating in a civil way. Yes, he would tell me that I had fallen out of love with his wife, but he didn't know what to do about it. There was a lot that he had told me about his marriage. He even confessed that he had never stopped loving me, and that he even tried to connect with me using letters and paging, but it seemed like I had never received any of those. Truthfully, I had seen a couple of numbers trying to page my home number, but I had ignored them, and sometimes my mother would not be around to use her paging speaker, but I had never received any letters because after like a year or two, my mother moved from Stapleton Island and went to live in Oklahoma. So as time went by and I sold my shop to the highest bidder, I knew it was a stupid move, but I have had enough. I was starting to enjoy being at home all alone. Since my husband was lacking in giving me attention and his time, I had to get used to being alone most of the time. People were starting to annoy me and I felt uncomfortable in Las Vegas since my husband was somehow a popular man. I felt like I was being watched every time I stepped out. Yes, people knew that I was his wife and it was good at first, but I eventually got tired of being in the spotlight because of my designs and the person I had married. But it's really hard being known as the wife of the businessman, but that husband never has time for his wife, only his business and friends. I somehow felt like I was slowly becoming a furnisher in the house because I was always at the house if I was not out. His name was everywhere. I was proud of him for everything he had achieved and was in his mind. I mean, he was living his dreams and they all came true. But I still missed him. I felt like I was just a trophy wife, someone who was just there to go to gala dinners with and come back home. I actually wanted to keep Keenan out of my heart and tried to convince myself that I loved Matt. Matt was just a hardworking man, and we only had time for intimacy once a week. Can you imagine the starvation I had? It was pretty hectic. Other women on social media thought I was just living the life but not knowing how lonely I was. Imagine being someone you only see twice on weekdays. He comes home when you're asleep and lives early in the morning. When he is at home, he is in his office and he doesn't want to be bothered unless you would be bringing him something to eat or snack on. I didn't know what to do anymore because he was not even paying any attention to my concerns. As much as I needed his time and attention, I was really concerned about his health. He was too attached to his work to a point that he would just lock himself in his study or small office room the whole day. I was really worried about him, and the connection that we had was slowly fading. I had been patient for way too long. I mean, even the heart that loves also gets tired, right? And love alone was not enough if there was no connection and affection. We were more life room or housemates because we were staying in the same house, sleeping on the same bed, but the connection was no longer there. I had known there and then that I had really lost my husband, not to any lady or whatever, but I lost him to his work. Time passed. He started going on his business trips for months, leaving me in the house. What did he think I was getting attention from? So I went out more often. Well, more like going to clubs more often. The way I was so stressed, I almost got myself drinking anxiety pills because of the way my husband was acting. It was stressing me out. Time passed, and I saw that going alone to release the stress that I had at home was somehow boring. So I asked Keenan to tag along just to avoid being bored. When Keenan and I got to the nearest club, it was epic. The music was busting on top of the roof, people were dancing, and I felt at home when I entered the club's door. It felt like it was where my heart belonged. My happiness got to be in play. We bought our own drinks while enjoying the music. You know, Keenan was a handsome, slim-fit guy with a nice-cut mustache. He was looking way too different than the time he left. I told Keenan that I didn't want any vodka shots because I still had to drive back home. But he didn't listen to me. Instead, he bought more booze, and a lot of shots telling me about YOLO, you only live once, and the conversation was flowing. It was really fun hanging with him. We laughed, danced, and even made jokes about each other's moves. It was what my soul needed. I felt at peace with so much happiness. Since that day, I continued going out, partying, and clubbing with Keenan. What I liked more about Keenan was that he was not afraid to live for himself. Yes, we were both going through our ***Thai marriages, but we left that outside the club and came to enjoy our lives. Keenan was also working as an architect, but he allowed himself to let loose a little. He was not afraid to be wild and be himself without any fear of being judged. Trevor and I were stealing glances at each other. I saw that we had a lot in common. During the times of going out, Trevor would sometimes ask me to be his date at parties, as friends, of course. That time I was still friend-zoning him even though my heart yearned for his touch. As much as that was wrong in so many ways, but I felt a sense of belonging, you know. I felt at home. I mean, he allowed me to be wild and carefree while he also does the same. It was like we were a couple that had an open relationship, and it felt great. I wanted that with Matt, but he didn't pay attention to my needs and desires. A month passed. Keenan and I went to this music event, and there was DJ Black Coffee, South Africa's best deep house DJ, along with other DJs and artists. It was truly a blast, and I was having so much fun. I loved the DJ very much, and it made me happy to get a chance to be at one of his events that took place in Madison Square Gardens. My husband, or must I say my ex-husband, never really cared about what I liked and what I didn't. All he cared about was showering me with those materialistic things that I didn't even like, but I would show happiness because I love him, you know. After DJ Black Coffee's event, we went to another nightclub not far from my house, or must I say Charlize's house. We got there and the music was booming, people minding their own business, having fun in every way. I was also having so much fun with Keenan, but what I didn't appreciate about him was that he kept confessing his feelings for me. I knew I was feeling the same, but I was trying by all means to mask that. I knew that I was married and committed to Matt, which was why I didn't consider Keenan's feelings towards me. I knew where my heart belonged, so when I told him to remember that I was someone's wife, he told me that he had noticed, but he couldn't live with the fact that he had feelings for me. Unexpectedly, I regretted myself and felt guilty after I kissed Keenan. Yes, I was intoxicated a lot to a point that I found myself craving for Keenan's sexy and pinkish lips. I couldn't contain myself any longer. I know I shouldn't have done that since I am or was a married woman, and what I did was breaking the vows that I had made in front of the Lord, both our families and friends. I knew that if Matt was to find out about what I had done, things would take a huge turn for me, and my marriage would either be in jeopardy or get destroyed completely. What shocked me later on that evening was when Keenan told me that he was going through a divorce, and his wife, or ex-wife rather, was threatening to take his children with her. I knew how much Keenan loved his children and how much they meant to him, so the issue was eating him up. Sure, he was no longer in love with his ex-wife, and he would have happily signed the divorce papers right after receiving them, but the fact that she wanted to fight her battles using his children somehow triggered a soft spot, sadness mixed with anger that he had tried to put a brave face on. I knew that that was a very sensitive issue to him, and I had to be there for him. That time I spent the night with Keenan. We kissed and foreplayed, but never got into the intimacy part, even though I was yearning for it. But I couldn't, or we couldn't go that far, because he was trying to win me back. He had already won my heart because it had never stopped loving and beating for him, but I had to think that I was married. So the next day I told him that whatever happened to us must remain where we were because I loved my husband. I was fooling myself, and I wanted to keep our relationship civil. The guilt was eating me up, to tell me that I found myself trying by all means to cover the shenanigan that I had done and focus on my marriage and my husband. Despite the feeling of unhappiness and loneliness, I knew that I had to put up a brave face and mask the whole thing, including the feelings that I had for Keenan. Frustrated and unhappy with what I had done, I decided to talk to Charlize about my desires, just to see his point of view. That day I had cooked a very nice dinner, his favorites only so we could talk about my issue. I explained how I felt trapped and that I needed some freedom to explore my sexuality since he is always focused on work and showering me with materialistic things, but never asked how I was, nor check if I am happy. I even emphasized that this wasn't about wanting to replace him, but rather about personal growth. I knew that I was lying, but I had to ask him in another way so that he wouldn't see that I had done something. I tried to reason with him, but he refused to budge. He believed that opening our relationship would lead to jealousy and heartbreak. And so, I made the difficult decision to put myself first. I knew that Matt loved me and I loved him also. But love alone is not enough if you are not happy, right? I hoped he would understand since he sees that I am always in the house doing nothing. It had become like I was a part of the house furniture. Another thing, my heart longed for Keenan, my ex-high school lover that I had recently rekindled with. Matt, however, didn't take it well. He felt hurt and betrayed by my request, but Matt was adamant that he didn't want to share me with anyone else. I explained my feelings, emphasizing that I still loved him deeply, but needed more space to grow as an individual. Matt, however, was taken aback by my proposal. I knew that he had never considered the possibility of an open relationship. To him, our relationship was built on trust and exclusivity. So my request caught him off guard and infuriated him to a point that he even asked if I was cheating on him, and if I had gotten someone else from the clubs that I was going to, and the trips that I had taken with some guy and kissing him. His question caught me off guard. How did he find out about all that? I was shocked and somehow scared about what he would do next, but I decided to deny all his allegations and told him to stop changing the topic. We ended up avoiding that topic, so I had moved from the dining room to the lounge so that I would get some privacy since I was chatting with Keenan on the phone. He was telling me that he had won a case that his ex-wife had filed for, and they were given 50% share in the children's custody. As much as Keenan was still facing and fighting the children's battles, he never forgot to tell me, or remind me rather, that he missed me and that his love for me had never vanished. As I was about to reply to that text, Matt came out of nowhere and snatched my phone. I tried fighting him, but you know how strong men are, so he pushed me down by force to the point that I collided with the glass coffee table and hurt my back. He told me that he wanted to see who I was chatting with and made me smile like a retard or a young girl given candy. Yes, Keenan knew how to choose words when speaking to me, and he knew which words to say and which buttons to press to make me feel some type of way. That moment, I didn't even want to see Matt's face. I knew that he had seen everything that had happened between Keenan and I, and it was just a matter of time before the bomb exploded. The following day, Matt went to work early and came back at night. He asked about the guy that I had been seen spending time with while he was not present. I denied everything that he was saying, and it led to a massive argument. So after a particularly heated argument, Matt made a decision that would change our lives forever. I couldn't believe it, I thought he loved me. He packed my belongings and asked me to leave our matrimonial home. Just because he saw my conversations with Keenan, he even came to the conclusion that I had wanted to open our relationship on purpose because I knew that I was cheating on him. I tried reasoning with him, but instead of understanding things in my own perspectives, he made a harsh and hurtful decision. I was so devastated. I had never imagined that my desire for exploration and my conversations with Keenan would lead to such a painful outcome. Yes, our conversations were not innocent or whatsoever, but he should have checked himself first and tried to find the reason why I was having those conversations and trips with Keenan. But as usual, the woman had to always be a villain. Our disagreement quickly escalated into a heated argument. Emotions ran high and hurtful words were exchanged. Matt made a decision that shocked both of us. I didn't think he would actually come up with that decision, just because I wanted our marriage to be open, but still my soul was with Keenan. He asked me to leave our shared home and told me that he was unable to continue our relationship under these circumstances. He told me right in my face that I should expect a call from our lawyer anytime soon, but he wanted me gone and continued with my ex because it was like a love lost and love found kind of thing. Matt took 50% of everything that I had owned, including the monies that I had on my bank account since we were married under community property. 50% was a very huge amount. The way I was so depressed, I ended up cutting things off with Keenan up until I had healed and was able to move on. So one day as I was driving to my mother's house to tell her what had happened, my mother was like my sister and the first best friend. I knew that she was going to judge me and maybe get angry at me, but she had to know. While I was driving while on the call, I got into an accident where a truck came out of nowhere and collided with my car. I don't know how I survived that accident, but I am grateful to God that I did. Later on, I received a call from Matt asking how I had survived and how much of a cat with 9 lives I was. He then told me that the way that truck hit my car was the same way that I had hit his heart and broke it into small pieces. I knew that I had done him wrong, but that was just so evil of him. I thought he loved me and would never hurt me. The scars that were in my body were nothing compared to the ones at the heart. With time, I healed and learned from my mistakes. I understood that sometimes the desire for personal growth can clash with the commitment we have to our loved ones. I vowed to communicate better in the future, to cherish the relationships that truly mattered, and to find happiness within myself. Keenan and I were still friends. I was just no longer ready for any relationship, so I was glad that he understood my issues. Keenan had been very helpful, caring, and supportive throughout the whole healing process. I still love Keenan, but I don't know if it would be the right thing to form a relationship with him while I had just gotten out of the messy divorce and still trying to heal. I really want to move on, but I want to know if it is the right time to do so. Any advice is welcome.